Now, we're going to read a story. The story is called The Eco Heroes. What do you predict the story will be about? What is a hero? Now, I can see that it's called The Eco Heroes and the Plastic Planet. I wonder what the plastic planet means. Think about this. The Eco Heroes and the Plastic Planet. Can you tell me who's the author of the story? Remember, the author is the person who wrote the story. Who is the illustrator? Well done. And the illustrator draws the pictures. Meet the characters. So these are the characters who will be in the story. These are called the Eco Heroes. So here is Ahmed. Ahmed is from the UAE. He is the youngest eco hero with big dreams and great ideas on how to save the planet. He wants to be a guardian of the UAE. And he was the one who named the Eco Heroes. This is Sundoz. Ahmed's perfect big sister, these are brother and sister, Sundoz is funny, kind, and super confident. She is head girl at school. Do you remember, what does confident mean? Here is Rudy. Rudy is from South Africa. He is obsessed with football and everything sporty. Here's Finlay. Finlay is from Scotland. He is silly, funny, and full of mischief. Maria. Maria is from India. She is super smart and always has her head buried in a book. Means she loves reading. These are all of the characters who we will meet in the story. So here is a poster of the Eco Heroes. It says, saving our world, starting in the UAE. And remember, UAE is United Arab Emirates. What's UAE? Well done. So here's Plastic Police. There's Finlay, Food Fanatic. Rudy, Water Watcher. Who's this? Is the Emperor of Energy. And Sundoz is Recycling Ruler. Think about the Eco Heroes' names, like Food Fanatic. What do you think they are in charge of? Have a think of their names. What do you think they're in charge of? You can pause the video while you're thinking. The Eco Heroes had become friends after a school competition to make a difference. Each of them had won in their own classes and had formed a team to help the school and community become more eco-friendly. Sure, it was good for their report cards, but the main reason was that they cared. When the Eco Heroes got together, they learned loads from each other, inspired each other, and had fun too. Working together was awesome. Chapter 1. Take your time, no rush, Sundoz said gently to her grandpa, taking his stick from him as he sat down on the floor, cross-legged. She waited until the old man was settled before joining him on the floor with the rest of the family. Let's pour Grandpa some tea, she suggested, eager for him to start the story he had promised her early that day. Sundoz and Ahmed's cousins, Noor and Kareem, were visiting them from Sharjah during the school holidays, and the family had decided to spend the morning in the old part of town. They were happy to take a dhow boat ride before wandering amongst the old buildings in the narrow streets. The galleries and shops were so calm and quiet compared to the business of the souks. It felt like another world. Race you! Kareem had cried, running off with Ahmed past big bags of colourful spices, almost knocking over an old lady. The two boys had been finding the slow pace of the morning a bit challenging. Oops, sorry. And look at the lady's face. How do you think she feels? Her eyebrows are telling me that she's probably a little bit angry. What do you think? They were really excited for the afternoon's beach activities with their friends and were desperate for their grandpa to tell them one of his stories instead of visiting any more art galleries. It was definitely time for tea and a story. Which would you prefer? Would you prefer looking around art galleries, or would you prefer listening to your grandpa's stories? Grandpa loved to tell stories, and the children were always captivated when he did. As he sat down, everyone stopped talking and gave their full attention. Today he was telling them stories about helping his grandpa on the pearl boats with his father when he was young. The children listened to every word as the old man told story after story. "I wish you were this quiet when I was talking to you," complained Sundo's dad. The children were so interested in their grandpa's historical tales that they didn't even realize he was speaking, that they didn't even hear their dad saying that. "The biggest difference from when I was a boy," Grandpa continued, "is that these days there is so much plastic in the sea. We never had to think about this before. We didn't have straws or plastic bags or bottles or nearly as much rubbish as we have today. It is everywhere. We are living in a world of convenience, and it is harming our planet more than any of us know." "Go on, Grandpa," Sundo said, just as the waiter arrived with a tray of plastic water bottles. So these water bottles here that the waiter has, they are made from plastic. "Do you have filtered water or glass bottles, please?" Sundoz asked the waiter nicely. He didn't seem to understand, but Sundoz explained it to the man while her grandpa carried on talking to the others. So Sundoz has asked the waiter instead of these bottles, because the plastic is just going to go in the bin. So she said, "Can we have a glass bottle or a jug, because then you can just wash it and use it again and again." "We used to have more marine life in our seas. Now there seems to be almost more plastic than fish," the old man said. "I heard on the radio that by the year 2050, that might really happen," Grandpa sighed. "Oh no, that sounds so terrible." So what Grandpa is saying is there's more plastic floating around the sea, like old bottles and rubbish in the sea, than there are marine life. And marine life means fish. Fish in the sea, fish, jellyfish, seahorses. Sundo sat back down beside him. "I read that more than 8 billion kilograms of plastic waste enters the world's oceans every year," she said. "It's worse for filter feeders like oysters because they mistake tiny bits of plastic for food, but it can be harmful for all sea creatures." Oh, that's so sad, because then they can choke if they think it's food, and then it gets stuck in their throat and they choke and die. "We learned in class that there is now a super high-tech robot in the UAE which can help reduce plastic waste in water," she explained. "It collects plastic, algae, rubbish, and lots of information. Don't worry, Grandpa, there are people doing great work to help the planet." "You know so much about plastic, Sundoz. Maybe one of these robots will think you are made of plastic and suck you up from the sea this afternoon," Nora joked with her cousin. They all laughed, and Grandpa seemed to forget his heavy heart. That would be very bad if the robot made a mistake and they thought a human was made from plastic and sucked them up, wouldn't it? "Off you go then," he told the children, jabbing Ahmed with his stick and waving them off. "It's time for my afternoon snooze. Have fun at the beach." Think of some items you could reuse. Write these on your whiteboard. So, guys, what I want you to do now is think of any items you know that you could reuse. For example, your bottle. Some of you probably use the same bottle for school every day, or for when you're drinking your water. Is there anything else like that? Write these down. Now I'm going to see, did you think of any of these? Here are some ideas. So for example, something that you can definitely reuse is a bag when you go to the shop. So when you go to Lulu's or Carrefour, you can buy this reusable bag. And then every time you go, if you keep it in the boot of your car is a good idea. And every time you go, you use the same bag. then that means that you're not getting a new plastic bag every time and then creating waste. So these are very, very good for the environment. Also, your lunchbox. You probably use these a lot, especially back when you were in school. So your lunchbox is very good way to look after the environment, because you're not throwing it in the bin straight after. You will wash it when you go home and you will use it again. Then you wash it, then you use it again. Same with your bottle for your water. Okay, so you don't throw it in the bin when you're finished. You clean it out later that day and then you use it again the next day. Okay, so you only have one bottle probably for a lot of months. Chapter 2. A short while later, oh, that's a lovely sentence opener. A short while later, the cousins were having fun on a beautiful stretch of sandy beach with their friends. In between games of volleyball, frisbee, and football, the eco-heroes were reading their books, listening to music, and totally chilling out. Chilling out means relaxing. Once they were at the beach, they never wanted to leave. There was something calming about the sea, and it seemed to put everyone in a really good mood. Not in my mouth! Kareem shouted as Ahmed and Rudy shoveled more sand on top of him. Every finger and every toe was buried under a huge mound of sand, and only Kareem's head was poking out. This was quite a risky move, since Rudy was thoroughly enjoying piling more sand on his friend's little cousin, and Kareem was completely at his mercy. Nearly finished, Ahmed laughed as he patted down the sand around Kareem and fed him some more fresh water. Kareem could not move. The children were having a great time building sandcastles and digging moats with their hands. Kareem was at the centre of the sand kingdom, which was decorated with hundreds of shells. Rainbow sand! Cried Kareem as he finally broke free from his prison. He was showing the others his hands, full of millions of tiny grains of multicoloured sand. This is what his hands look like. Interesting. That's not sand, exclaimed Sundoes. Those are nurdles. What on earth are nurdles? Asked Noor, coming for a closer look and leaning in to see what her brother was holding. Nurdles are tiny bits of plastic which are used in factories to make bigger plastic things for us to buy, Sundoes explained. Like furniture, toys, packaging, loads of things. They easily get washed into drains because they are so small. Nurdles can also come from bigger plastic things too, like bottles or bags, which get broken down into tiny pieces over time. Plastic never really seems to go away. It just gets smaller and smaller until it becomes a microplastic. Micro means very small, small plastic. It is then eaten by sea creatures because they think it's food. Oh, like the oysters you were talking about this morning, Noor exclaimed. Exactly, replied Sundoes. I have a question, Rudy said thoughtfully. If tiny sea creatures like oysters eat tiny bits of plastic and they get eaten by crabs or fish, which are then caught and sold in shops and restaurants, does that mean humans end up with plastic in their stomachs too? Yes, Sundoe exclaimed. Well done, detective. You need to be in my team for the school quiz. Rudy wasn't sure if Sundoes was joking or not, but he didn't like being right this time. He didn't have long to think about it though, because Finley was now making all sorts of groaning noises and clutching his stomach dramatically beside him. Talking about food, Finley moaned. I'm starving. Would someone please order me an ice cream? Yeah, sure. Supersized ice cream drone delivery coming right up, Noor joked, running off with no intention of getting lazy little Finley a single thing. Now, I want you to think, did you ever go to the beach and see any rubbish or dirt? What did you see? How did it get there? Do you look at the picture here, this illustration? Do you notice any plastic on this beach? Lots of plastic, isn't there? There were people eating with plastic cutlery, drinking with plastic cups, using plastic straws, plastic bottles, plastic bags, plastic balls, plastic sunscreen bottles, plastic buckets, and spades. And everywhere the children looked, people were using plastic of some kind. Oh my goodness, did you notice all of those bits of plastic? Whoa. I see, I get it now, said Rudy, beginning to understand. People are using plastic for everything. Is it always that bad, Sundoes? I mean, we've got loads of plastic in our house. And she's thinking of all the things she has plastic bag of apples, plastic if you have tins of cola and it's around them, plastic bottle, plastic straw, plastic carton. The fish is in a plastic box. The grapes are in a plastic box, the wrapping of the sweet, the burger box. No, of course not. It is actually a really useful material, and that's why so much of it is made. It's just that people use it without thinking when they really don't need it, and then throw it away, never to be used again, Sundoes explained. That's called single use. Single use means you only use it once and then you throw it in the bin. A lot of energy is used to make plastic, so it's really wasteful to throw it away after using it only once. Did you know that 1 million single-use plastic bottles are bought every minute around the world? We are becoming a planet made of plastic. If you buy plastic, which you can reuse again and again, it is not as bad for the environment, but we all need to try use less. There's a plastic bag, plastic coffee cup. The carrots are in a plastic bag. This is like an iced coffee or a milkshake. The children stood on the beach looking out to sea, thinking about what Sundoes had told them. If what she said was true and her facts were right, then that was pretty bad news for the animals in the sea. In fact, it was not good news for anyone living on planet Earth. So what we need to do, guys, is reduce the amount of plastic that we use, reuse our plastic, and if we can't do that, recycle it. So I want you to talk to somebody at home and discuss these 3 words and what they mean. Now, here is your activity. So, sort and categorize. Sort the objects into the correct group. These are the objects over here: paper, batteries, metal, fuel, electricity, plastic, boxes, and water. I want you to decide which one you would be able to reduce, which one you could reuse, and which one you could recycle. Okay? So we can't reuse water, for example. But what we could do is reduce it. Instead of standing in the shower for ages, you could just have a quick shower, and that would be how you could reduce it. Okay? So have a think. Here's a challenge now if you would like to try it. For those you put in the reduced section, that's this section here, I would like you to explain how you would reduce them. Here is an example. I would reduce how much fuel is gas or petrol for the car, I use by walking to the shop when I can instead of driving. Or if you're going to your friend's house and your friend lives across the road, you could walk instead of driving. That would reduce your fuel.